You spend your whole life working for peace, saving for stability, building something that finally feels like yours. But what if the very person you trusted most, your own sister, decided that your dream home was hers to take? No permission, no respect, just pure entitlement. That's what happened to me, and what started as a phone call from my sister turned into the biggest showdown of my life. Before I begin, don't forget to like this video, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell icon so you never miss these stories, and share your thoughts in the comments, because trust me, you're going to have a lot to say about what my sister tried to pull. My name is Barbara, and this is the story of how my $2 million oceanfront villa became the stage for a family betrayal I'll never forget. I bought my villa after years of sacrifice. I wasn't born into money, and nothing about my life came easy. I worked long hours, skipped vacations, and lived modestly, all with one dream in mind, a home by the sea where I could finally breathe. When I first unlocked the doors of my villa, with its glass walls opening to endless waves, I thought, this is it. This is where I'll find peace. For a few months, it was exactly that. Quiet mornings with coffee on the balcony, evenings watching sunsets melt into the horizon. I'd never felt more at home. But then came Melissa. Melissa is my older sister, and if you asked her, she'd tell you she's always been the responsible one. The truth? Melissa has a habit of taking money, taking credit, taking advantage, especially of me. Growing up, I was the peacemaker. If she wanted something, I gave in, because fighting with her always turned ugly. But I thought by adulthood, by the time I had carved out my own life, maybe things would change. I was wrong. One Tuesday afternoon, I was unpacking groceries when my phone rang. It was Melissa. At first, her voice was overly cheerful, the way it always was when she wanted something. "Barbara," she said. "Guess what? We've decided we're coming to stay with you for the holidays." I froze. "We?" "Oh, me and a few friends," she said casually. "Well, more like 15 people. But don't worry, we won't be any trouble. Just 3 weeks, and you've got that huge place anyway." Perfect, right? Perfect? She wasn't asking. She was telling me. Like my villa was some resort she had booked for free. I tried to stay calm. "Melissa, you can't just invite yourself over with 15 people. This is my home." She sighed dramatically. "Barbara, don't be so selfish. You're always alone in that big house. We'll bring life into it. Family should share, you know? Family should share." I almost laughed. Because when Melissa bought her brand new car last year, did she offer to share it? When she borrowed money from me 5 different times, did she ever pay me back? Sharing to her only worked one way. I told her it wasn't possible, that I needed my space. She didn't argue. She just said, "Fine. We'll talk when I get there." And then she hung up. I should have known what was coming. The very next day, I came home from running errands and nearly dropped my keys. There were cars lined up outside my villa. Music thumped from inside. My front door, my locked front door, was wide open. I stepped inside and my jaw dropped. People I had never seen before were sprawled across my living room, drinks in hand, laughing like they owned the place. Suitcases littered the floor, my furniture had been shoved aside to make room for sleeping bags, and in the middle of it all, there was Melissa, holding a glass of wine. "Barbara," she shouted, like she was welcoming me into her home. "You're just in time. Come say hi to everyone." I didn't move. "Melissa. What is going on here?" She grinned. "Oh, relax. We came a day early. Hope you don't mind. Well, even if you do, too late now." Then she gestured upstairs. "By the way, I put my stuff in the master bedroom. It's gorgeous. You really outdid yourself with this place. My blood ran cold. My sanctuary, the home I had built brick by brick with my hard work, had been turned into a free-for-all. My master bedroom, the one space that was truly mine, was claimed like a prize she had earned. I looked around, and it hit me how quickly she had stripped away my peace. My dream had turned into chaos in less than an hour. But I didn't yell. Not yet. Because deep down, I realized something. This wasn't the first time Melissa had done this. Sure, not in such an extreme way, but this was her pattern. She had barged into my finances, my time, my patience. And every time, I let it slide. This time? Not anymore. I smiled, not because I was okay, but because I had finally made a decision. If Melissa thought she could barge into my villa, treat it like a resort, and walk all over me again, then she was about to learn the hardest lesson of her life. And what I did next, well, let's just say she never expected me to fight back. When I tell you I stood in the middle of my living room and felt like a stranger in my own house, I mean it. My sister's laughter echoed through the walls, her friends stomped across my floors, and my villa, my dream, suddenly felt like a place I didn't recognize. Melissa walked over with that smug little smile she always had when she thought she was in control. "Don't give me that look, Barbara," she said, sipping her wine. "We're family. Families stay together. Besides, you've got more than enough space. You don't need all this to yourself." Her words stung because they carried the same tone I'd heard my whole life. Growing up, Melissa was the queen, and I was the quiet one who gave in. She took my toys, wore my clothes, even invited her friends to crash in my room when we were teenagers. Back then, I stayed silent. But now, in my own $1 million villa, I realized she hadn't changed one bit. I tried to stay calm. "Melissa, you can't just move 15 people into my house without asking. This isn't a hotel." She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, come on. Stop being dramatic. You're just jealous because my friends are fun. Lighten up, Barbara." Jealous? That was her favorite word. Anytime I stood up for myself, she twisted it to make me feel guilty. I swallowed the anger rising in my chest and quietly excused myself. I went upstairs, needing to breathe, only to find my master bedroom door wide open. The sight made my blood boil. Melissa's suitcase was sprawled across my bed, her clothes scattered on my vanity, her shoes thrown carelessly on the floor. She had even lit one of my expensive candles, the ones I saved for special evenings. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just an inconvenience. This was war. But instead of storming downstairs, I did something Melissa would never expect. I smiled. Because if I had learned anything about her over the years, it was that she thrived on chaos. If I yelled, if I made a scene, she'd twist it, make me look like the unreasonable one. No. This time, I needed to be smarter. So, I stayed quiet. I watched. I listened. For the next 2 days, my villa turned into something out of a nightmare. Melissa's friends lounged by the pool, leaving empty bottles everywhere. They blasted music until 2 in the morning, ignoring my requests to turn it down. They raided my kitchen, ate food I had bought for myself, and even used my towels without asking. Every corner of my house reeked of disrespect. One evening, as I was cleaning up after yet another of their poolside parties, I overheard Melissa talking to one of her friends. "Barbara should be grateful," she said, laughing. "We're giving her villa life. Without us, she'd just be here alone, bored out of her mind. Besides, she owes me. I've always looked after her." Looked after me? The audacity of that line nearly made me choke. She had never once looked after me, it had always been the other way around. That night, as I lay awake in the guest room I had been forced into because my own bedroom had been taken, I made my decision. Enough was enough. Melissa thought she could control me, but this was my home, my life, my boundaries. And I was about to remind her of that, in a way she'd never forget. The next morning, I woke up early, before anyone else. The villa was quiet, just the sound of waves outside my window. I walked through the halls, picking up empty glasses and trash, but instead of feeling defeated, I felt stronger with every step. Melissa had crossed the line, and I was ready to draw one of my own. Later that day, as her friends lounged by the pool and Melissa claimed the sunniest chair like a queen on her throne, I brought out a tray of drinks. I smiled as I handed them out, pretending to be the gracious hostess. Melissa smirked at me, thinking she had won. But inside, I was already planning my next move. Because here's what Melissa didn't know: the villa wasn't just my home. It was also fully insured, monitored, and under my name alone. I had every legal right to decide who stayed and who left. And I had already spoken to a lawyer the night before. If Melissa refused to leave peacefully, I could have the authorities escort her and her friends out without hesitation. The thought of it made me feel powerful for the first time in years. As I watched Melissa laugh by the pool, bragging about how amazing it was to have a sister with money, I realized something important: this wasn't just about my villa. It was about reclaiming my dignity. For too long, I had let Melissa walk all over me. Every time she borrowed money, every time she manipulated me, every time she twisted the story so she was the victim and I was the villain. It had built up to this moment. And now, I finally had the chance to stop the cycle. That evening, I decided to test her. I sat down next to her, acting casual. "So, Melissa," I said lightly, "how long were you planning to stay again?" She sipped her wine and grinned. "Oh, don't worry about it. 3 weeks, maybe longer. Depends how we feel. Your villa is just too perfect to leave." 3 weeks? Maybe longer? That was the final straw. I excused myself, walked into my office, and picked up the phone. With one calm call, I set everything in motion. The next morning, Melissa and her friends woke up to something they never expected: a knock on the door that would change everything. Because when they opened it, they weren't greeted by me. They were greeted by uniformed officers. Melissa's smug smile finally slipped. And in that instant, I knew, the lesson she was about to learn would stay with her forever. The knock at the door was sharp, steady, and impossible to ignore. Melissa's friends looked up groggily from the couches and beanbags they had sprawled across, confusion painted on their faces. Melissa, still in her silk robe, marched over like she owned the place. When she opened the door, the color drained from her face. 2 officers stood there, calm but firm, hands resting on their belts. "Good morning," one of them said politely. "We've had a report of unauthorized guests staying at this residence. Are you the owner of the property?" Melissa hesitated, blinking rapidly. "Well, not exactly. My sister owns it. But she's fine with us being here. Right, Barbara?" She turned to me, her voice tight, almost pleading. I stepped forward, my heart pounding, but my voice steady. "No, I am not fine with it. This is my home, and none of you had permission to be here." Gasps rippled through the group. Melissa's jaw dropped as if she couldn't believe I had actually spoken up. "Barbara, you're being ridiculous. We're family. You can't just..." One officer raised his hand gently. "Ma'am, this isn't about family. It's about property rights. If the owner says you don't have permission, then you need to leave immediately." Melissa sputtered, her face turning red. "You can't do this to me." But the officers were already giving instructions. They told everyone to gather their belongings, pack up, and vacate the premises. Slowly, grudgingly, Melissa's friends began to move, grumbling as they shoved clothes into bags and stuffed belongings into suitcases. The party atmosphere that had taken over my villa vanished in an instant, replaced by a thick silence filled with tension and disbelief. Melissa turned back to me, her eyes blazing. "How could you embarrass me like this? In front of everyone?" I took a deep breath, my hands no longer trembling. "Melissa, you embarrassed yourself. You barged into my home without permission. You disrespected me, my space, and everything I've worked for. I've let you walk over me for years, but not anymore. This ends today." For once, she had no comeback. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She looked smaller than I had ever seen her, like the weight of reality had finally pressed down on her shoulders. The officers gave her one last chance. "Ma'am, we need you to leave now." Melissa's eyes flicked around the room, maybe hoping one of her friends would defend her. But they were too busy packing, too embarrassed to get involved. Finally, with a loud huff, she grabbed her suitcase off my bed and stormed toward the door. "Fine. But don't expect me to ever speak to you again." I almost laughed at the irony. That was supposed to be a threat? As she stomped outside, dragging her entourage with her, I felt something inside me shift. Relief, yes, but also strength. For the first time in my life, I had stood up to Melissa, and won. Once the last car pulled away, I closed the front door and leaned against it. The villa was quiet again. My villa. My peace. My sanctuary. For hours, I walked through the house, putting everything back in its place. I stripped my bed of Melissa's perfume-soaked sheets, threw away the empty bottles, scrubbed the counters until they gleamed. By the time I was done, the house felt like mine again. And more than that, I felt like me again. That night, I sat on the balcony, watching the waves crash against the shore. For the first time in weeks, I felt truly at peace. No more chaos. No more manipulation. Just me, my villa, and the freedom I had earned. But the story didn't end there. A few days later, I got a text from Melissa. Short, bitter, and dripping with sarcasm. "Hope you're happy. You ruined Christmas for me and my friends. Don't bother calling me ever again." I smiled as I read it. Because the truth was, I was happy. Not because I had ruined anything, but because I had finally broken free. For years, Melissa had used guilt, entitlement, and manipulation to keep me under her thumb. But when she barged into my villa, she crossed a line. And by standing up for myself, I had not only protected my home but reclaimed my dignity. And the best part? The silence that followed. No constant demands, no sudden calls asking for money, no guilt trips. Just silence. It was the most peaceful Christmas I'd had in years. Looking back, I realized something important. Peace doesn't just come from the house you live in, or the view outside your window. Real peace comes from boundaries. From standing up and saying, "This is mine, and you can't take it." Melissa thought she could turn my dream home into her playground. Instead, she gave me the greatest gift of all. The courage to finally put an end to her games. And as I sat there on my balcony, sipping a glass of wine, I whispered to myself, never again. Because from that day forward, I wasn't just the sister who stayed quiet. I was the sister who stood tall, who fought back, and who finally taught Melissa the lesson she had needed to learn all her life.